our global audience joining us from every corner of the tennis world. Welcome back to the channel, where today we are not just covering a match. We are covering a movement. We are covering a seismic shift in the landscape of the WTA that has left commentators speechless, legends baffled, and the current hierarchy of women's tennis absolutely shaken to its core. If you've been following the Australian Open down in Melbourne, you know that the headlines are usually dominated by the titans, the Sabalenkas, the Swiateks, the Djokovic's. But this week, the narrative was hijacked. The spotlight was stolen, not by a Grand Slam champion on Rod Laver Arena, but by a 20-year-old rising star on a side court who turned a standard first-round match into a gladiatorial spectacle that the sport has rarely seen. We are talking, of course, about the Filipino phenomenon, Alexandra Eala. The headline today is not just about a win or a loss. It is about a revelation. We have received reports, confirmed by on-site sources and verified by statements from the players themselves, that the atmosphere surrounding Alex Eala has officially leveled up into uncharted territory. We are calling it Eala Mania, but even that term feels insufficient for what occurred at Melbourne Park. And the biggest shock? It comes from the reaction of the establishment. We are looking at world number 6, the American powerhouse Jessica Pegula, a woman known for her calm demeanor, her business-like approach to the tour, and her unflappable focus. Jessica Pegula has come forward with comments, a confession, if you will, that sheds light on exactly what is happening with Alexandra Eala. When a top 10 player, a perennial contender for major titles, stops her own preparation to comment on insanity of the crowd for a player ranked outside the top 40, you know something historic is brewing. Today we are going deep. We are peeling back the layers of this story. We are going to analyze exactly what happened on Court 6 that caused lines to wrap around the stadium. We are going to dissect Jessica Pegula's specific words and what they mean for the future of Asian tennis. We are going to look at the controversy. Yes, the controversy regarding the crowd behavior, the accusations of unnecessary pressure, and why Novak Djokovic himself had to weigh in on the situation. This is not just a story about a tennis match. This is a story about cultural representation. It is about the burden of carrying a nation's flag on your shoulders at 20 years old. It is about the collision between the old guard of tennis etiquette and the new wave of passionate, deafening support that Eala brings to every venue she enters. From the frenzied cues in Melbourne to the echoes of their battle in Miami last year, we are connecting the dots. Why is Jessica Pegula so fixated on Eala? What did she see in that Miami semifinal that made her realize Eala is a threat? And why is the tennis world suddenly waking up to the reality that Alexandra Eala is not just a prospect anymore? She is a superstar with a fan base that rivals the Big Three. Prepare yourselves. We are about to break down the stats, the quotes, the crowd dynamics, and the raw emotion of a week that changed everything. The entire tennis world is shocked. The frenzy has leveled up, and Jessica Pegula has spoken. Stay tuned, buckle up, and do not move a muscle. We are diving into the eye of the storm. This is the Alex Eala Deep Dive. To understand the magnitude of what we are discussing today, we cannot simply look at a scoreboard. In tennis, the scoreboard tells you who won the final point. It does not tell you who won the war for public attention. It does not tell you whose name was chanted until the stadium shook. And it certainly does not tell you why a player like Jessica Pegula, sitting comfortably in the elite tier of the WTA, feels compelled to address the rise of a young challenger. Let's set the scene. Melbourne Park, January 2026. The Australian Open. This is a happy slam, known for its relaxed vibes and summer heat. But when the schedule was released and Alex Eala was placed on Court 6 for her opening round match against the big-serving American Alicia Parks, tournament organizers made a critical miscalculation. They treated it like a standard match. They treated Alex Eala like a standard player. They were wrong. Reports from the ground describe a scene more akin to a rock concert or a World Cup football match than a tennis fixture. Hours before the first ball was struck, the queue for Court 6 didn't just exist. It snaked around the precinct. It wrapped around adjacent stadiums. Fans, draped in the red, blue, and yellow of the Philippine flag, were not just waiting. They were vibrating with anticipation. We are talking about hundreds, perhaps thousands, of fans who were ultimately turned away because the court simply could not contain the Eala army. Now, let's bring in the Jessica Pegula angle. Why is this significant? Jessica Pegula is tennis royalty. She is consistent. She is wealthy. She is established. She has seen it all. She has played on Arthur Ashe at night. She has played on center court at Wimbledon. For her to comment on the atmosphere of a first-round match involving another player is rare. In her press conference following her own second-round victory, Pegula was asked about the buzz around the grounds. Her response was telling. She admitted to watching the Eala match and being stunned by the visuals. She described people wrapped around the stadium just trying to get in. She called it crazy. When a player of Pegula's caliber uses the word crazy to describe your crowd support, it validates you. It moves you from being a national hero in your own country to being a global phenomenon on the tour. Pegula's confession was an acknowledgement that Eala possesses something that many top 10 players do not: a mobilized, passionate, traveling fan base that can alter the physics of a tournament. But we have to look closer at the history between these two to understand the respect underpinning these comments. This isn't just Pegula observing a stranger. Remember Miami. Remember March 2025. If we rewind the clock to the Miami Open last year, that was the moment the Eala-Pegula dynamic was forged in fire. Alex Eala, a wild card, went on a Cinderella run that defies logic. She didn't just beat nobodies. She took out Grand Slam champions. She dismantled Yelena Ostapenko. She swept aside Madison Keys. She stunned the world by taking down Iga Swiatek. And who was waiting for her in the semifinals? Jessica Pegula. That match was a war. It wasn't a quick straight sets dismissal. Eala pushed Pegula to the absolute brink. It went 3 sets. It was physical. It was grueling. And after Pegula finally clinched that victory to reach the final, she was exhausted. Her on-court interview was a confession in itself. She said, "I don't think she needs me to tell her she's a great player. We are definitely going to see more of her." Fast forward to today, Melbourne 2026. When Pegula sees that crowd frenzy, she isn't surprised by the talent. She knows the talent is there. She felt the heavy topspin of the Eala forehand in Miami. She felt the grit. What shocks her now, what shocks the entire tennis world, is the scale of the stardom. This brings us to a critical and somewhat controversial point of our analysis: the crowd frenzy paradox. The title of today's report mentions a crowd frenzy level up, and we have to address what that actually looked like. It wasn't just cheering. It was an avalanche of noise. During the match against Alicia Parks, the atmosphere became a central character in the drama. And this is where the story gets complicated. Tennis is a sport steeped in Victorian-era etiquette. Silence during points. Polite applause for winners. Respect for both players. The Eala crowd, fueled by national pride and pure adrenaline, broke those unwritten rules. There were reports of cheering during double faults. There was noise during the service motion. It got to the point where Alicia Parks, a professional athlete, was visibly rattled. She admitted in her post-match interview that the crowd was very difficult and that she had to fight to stay in the zone. This sparked a global debate. Social media lit up. Was it disrespectful? Or is this simply the new face of tennis? Novak Djokovic, the 24-time Grand Slam champion, weighed in, and this is where the narrative shifts from controversy to validation. Djokovic called it a good problem to have. He compared the interest in Eala to the fervor we see in Davis Cup matches. When the greatest male player of all time looks at the chaos surrounding Alex Eala and says, "This is good for tennis," it silences the critics. It frames the frenzy not as a nuisance, but as a necessary evolution of the sport. But let's go back to Pegula. Why does her opinion matter so much in this specific context? Jessica Pegula represents the pinnacle of the American hardcourt game. She is the standard bearer for consistency. For her to confess that the scene was insane is to admit that the energy in women's tennis is shifting east. For decades, we have looked to Europe and the Americas for the superstars. We had Lina, of course, and Naomi Osaka. But Alex Eala represents a different demographic. Southeast Asia. The Philippines, a nation that treats sports stars like deities. Pegula's comments suggest a recognition that the Eala brand is becoming as powerful as the Eala game. And for a top player, that is terrifying. Imagine playing Alexandra Eala in a few years. She is top 50 now. She is winning gold medals at the SEA Games. She is getting wild cards into WTA 500s like Abu Dhabi. As her ranking climbs, she will not be on Court 6 anymore. She will be on Rod Laver Arena. She will be on Arthur Ashe. And that crowd, that frenzy, it will not be 500 people. It will be 15,000 people. That is what Jessica Pegula sees. She looks at the lines wrapping around the stadium, and she sees the future. She sees a future where playing Alex Eala means playing against an entire nation. In a sport that is famously lonely, where it's one-on-one, Eala turns it into one versus the Philippines. Let's break down the technical implications of this level up. We watched Eala's performance in Melbourne closely. Despite the first-round exit at the Parks, the stats tell a fascinating story of evolution. The first set was a bagel, 6-0 to Eala. She came out of the gates firing. The crowd was fueling her, and she was channeling that energy into blistering forehand winners. She was taking the ball early, a tactic she likely refined after that loss to Pegula in Miami. However, the level up in crowd frenzy also brings a level up in pressure. And this is the double-edged sword that Pegula hinted at. The confession about the crazy crowd isn't just, wow, look at the fans. It is an implicit question. Can she handle it? We saw in the second and third sets against Parks that the pressure might have become heavy. When the opponent pushes back, when the crowd gets anxious, the racket can feel like it weighs 100 pounds. Alicia Parks, to her credit, served 12 aces. She took the racket out of Eala's hands. But the narrative remains. Eala is learning to swim in a tsunami of expectations. The shock the tennis world is feeling is a realization that Eala is not a flash in the pan. The Miami run in 2025 was not a fluke. The crowd in Melbourne 2026 confirms that she is staying power. Sponsors are noticing. Tournament directors are noticing. Hence the immediate wild card to Abu Dhabi following the Australian Open. They want that crowd. They want that frenzy. Jessica Pegula, as a member of the WTA Player Council, understands the business of tennis better than anyone. Her family owns the Buffalo Bills. She knows sports entertainment. When she talks about Eala, she is identifying a marketable asset that is exploding in value. Her confession is essentially a verified seal of approval that Alex Eala is good for business. But let's dig deeper into the confessed aspect of the title. What is the subtext? There is a sense of camaraderie among the top women. They know how hard the tour is. When Pegula sees Eala taped up like a mummy as she was in Miami, or fighting through a deafening crowd in Melbourne, there is respect. The confession is an admission of shared struggle. It is Pegula saying, I see you. I see what you are dealing with. And it is wild. It is also worth noting the contrast in styles. Pegula is efficient, flat-hitting, low trajectory. Eala is a lefty, spin-heavy, emotional fighter. They are polar opposites on the court, which makes their rivalry. And yes, we can call it a budding rivalry, so compelling. The next time they meet, whether it is in Indian Wells, Rome, or Paris, the dynamic will be different. Eala will not be the underdog wild card. She will be the top 50 contender with the loudest crowd in tennis. And Pegula will be the veteran trying to hold the fort. The tennis world is shocked because the transition happened so fast. One moment Eala is a junior champion. The next, she is causing security concerns because too many people want to watch her practice. This trajectory is reminiscent of the early days of Rafa Nadal or Maria Sharapova. It is that it factor. And let's be honest about the criticism. The toxic elements of the crowd. We need to analyze this objectively. Every major star brings a new demographic to the sport. When Serena Williams played, the crowd were different. When Roger Federer played, the crowds were different. The Filipino crowd brings a basketball-style energy to a tennis court. It is raucous. It is unrelenting. For traditionalists, this is shocking. For players like Pegula and Djokovic, it is a good problem. Why? Because silence doesn't sell tickets. Passion sells tickets. Eala brings passion in bulk. The level up we are seeing in 2026 is mental, physical, and atmospheric. Mentally, Eala is handling media scrutiny that would crush most 20-year-olds. Physically, she is competing with power hitters like Parks and Pegula. Atmospherically, she is turning Court 6 into center court. As we look ahead to the rest of the season, the question is, how does Eala harness this frenzy? Can she use the energy without letting the pressure suffocate her? Pegula's comment suggests that the locker room is watching. They are aware. They know that when they see Eala in the draw, they are not just playing a girl. They are playing a phenomenon. This deep dive would not be complete without acknowledging the broader impact on Asian tennis. Since the retirement of Li Na, and with Osaka's intermittent schedule, there has been a void. The tour needs a superstar from Asia. The crowd numbers in Melbourne prove that Eala is filling that void. She is the new hope, and that hope is loud. So, when you see the headlines, "Entire tennis world shocked," understand that it is not hyperbole. It is a factual description of the state of play. The establishment was not ready for the sheer volume of support Alex Eala commands. They were not ready for the intensity. Jessica Pegula, sitting at world number 6, confessed what everyone was thinking. This is crazy. And she is right. It is crazy. But it is the kind of crazy that makes sports worth watching. It is the kind of crazy that builds legends. Alex Eala has arrived. The crowd frenzy has leveled up. And the world, including Jessica Pegula, is watching. We have covered a lot of ground today, dissecting one of the most fascinating narratives currently unfolding on the WDA Tour. From the packed chaos of Melbourne Park to the insightful, candid confessions of Jessica Pegula, the picture is clear. Alexandra Eala is no longer just a participant in women's tennis. She is a protagonist. What we are witnessing is the birth of a new era for Filipino and Southeast Asian tennis. The days of flying under the radar are over. The days of quiet side court matches are gone. Every time Alex Eala steps onto the court now, she brings a tidal wave of energy with her. And as we analyze, this energy is recognized and respected by the very best in the game, from Novak Djokovic to Jessica Pegula. The shock that rippled through the tennis world this week is a positive one. It is the shock of growth. It is the shock of realizing that the sport is bigger, louder, and more passionate than we thought possible. As Eala prepares for her next challenge, the WDA 500 in Abu Dhabi, where she has already secured a main draw wild card, the eyes of the world will remain fixed on her. Will the Eala army follow her to the Middle East? Will we see a rematch with Pegula or another top-tier titan? One thing is for certain. The intensity is not going away. We will be here to track every serve, every forehand, and every moment of this incredible journey. This is a story that is just writing its opening chapters, and we are privileged to watch it unfold in real time. Thank you for sticking with us through this deep dive. If you found this analysis insightful, if you felt the energy of the crowd through our words, and if you want to stay ahead of the curve on all things tennis, make sure you are subscribed. We don't just read the scores here. We tell the story behind the score. Signing off. Keep your eyes on the ball, and keep your eyes on Alex Eala. The frenzy has only just begun. Good night, and see you in the next one.